Good afternoon. Welcome to the Rotary Club of Cincinnati. We have a very special program for you today. Senator Rob Portman is here. Your hometown cheers you, Senator. In addition, we have several distinguished guests, including the Cincinnati-Kharkiv Sister City Partnership delegation from the Red Cross. To honor our friends from Ukraine, we'd like to begin this meeting with the Ukrainian national anthem, followed by the Star-Spangled Banner. Our guest, Tatiana, is going to perform the Ukrainian national anthem for us. Welcome, Tatiana.
Yeah? Ще не вмерла в Україні ні слава, ні воля. Ще нам, браття українці, усміхнеться доля. Згинуть наші воріженьки, як роса на сонці, запануєм і ми, браття, у своїй сторонці. Душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу і покажем, що ми, браття, козацького роду. Душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу і покажем, що ми, браття, козацького роду.
Wow, what a way to start a meeting. Tatiana, you're welcome back next week. Tom White, our delightful pianist today, prepared the Ukrainian national anthem and charted it in his spare time yesterday to make this event possible. Thank you, Tom. Next, please welcome Steve Dreyfel to lead us in the four-way test and invocation, followed by Kelly Collison to welcome our guests and visiting Rotarians.
Thank you, President Steve. Let's bow our heads. Thank you, Heavenly Father, for bringing us together today to share a meal, conversation, and fellowship. We thank you for this venue, for the food you have provided to nourish our body, and for those who have prepared and served it. God above, today we have the privilege and honor of hearing from Konstantin Bashkarov and Tatiana Zima, executives of the Kharkiv Red Cross. We pray that you will guide them, their staff and volunteers in their work, provide the resources they need to serve their citizens during this time of war, and protect them from harm. We ask that you bring the war that has so devastated their country to an end, and that peace and freedom is restored to the people of Ukraine. Father, we are blessed to live in a great country, and thank you for that privilege. There may be differences in our political thought and in what is best for our country, but we work to resolve these differences through debate and discussion. We are thankful for Senator Rob Portman, who so ably represents the citizens of our great state of Ohio. He has served our country for many years in many roles. Thank you for providing us with a senator so dedicated to the well-being of his fellow Americans and our country. So, Father, we are blessed today to have Konstantin, Tatiana, and Senator Portman as our guests, and as true examples of people who put service above self. Amen. And now, please join me in the four-way test of the things we think, say, or do. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Thank you.
You may be seated.
Good afternoon, fellow Rotarians and guests, and welcome Senator Portman. You chose a great meeting to attend. We have 20 guests and prospective members joining us today. We want to extend a warm welcome to each one of you. We gather together for service and fellowship each week here at Rotary. We hope you enjoyed today's meeting and hope you'll consider joining our club as a member. We also have 3 distinguished groups that I'd like to recognize. When I call your name, please stand. From the office of Congressman Steve Shabbat, we welcome Joe Abner, District Director, and Congressman Steve Shabbat for Ohio's 1st District. From the Cincinnati-Kharkiv Sister City Partnership, we welcome Alvia Price, Director of Red Cross of Greater Cincinnati, Bob Herring, President of Cincinnati-Kharkiv Sister City Partnership, Susan Neiman, Vice President of Cincinnati-Kharkiv Sister City Partnership, Sasha Etlin, member of the Cincinnati-Kharkiv Sister City Partnership Board and interpreter, Konstantin Bashkarov, President of the Kharkiv Red Cross and member of the Ukrainian Red Cross Board, and Tatiana Zima, Executive Director of the Kharkiv Red Cross. And from the office of Senator Portman, we welcome Gabe Olinger, Senator Portman's personal aide, Leonard Hubert, Director of Coalition Outreach and Rural Affairs for Senator Portman, Nan Cahill, Southwest Ohio District Director for Senator Portman, and John Prest, Northeast Ohio District Rep and immediate past president of Youngstown Rotary. And Josh, if you would please remain standing and come to the dais, we would like to do a flag exchange between Rotary clubs with President Steve King. Again, thank you all for coming to Club 17. We hope you enjoy your afternoon with us.
It's a Rotary tradition to exchange flags from clubs from around the world and around our fair state. Josh, welcome to Cincinnati Club.
Thank you.
Thank you for your service to Rotary. And I guess we will make the exchange.
There you go.
There you
Excellent.
are.
Thanks for having
again.
us. Appreciate it.
Oh, one more? All right. Excellent. Thank you. Thanks again.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Josh is the immediate past president of the Youngstown Club. Melinda, I think you and Josh served to change lives. Today's meeting is being sponsored by Rotarian John Farmeyer and UBS. John, thank you for your generous support of the club, and thank you for lending your talents as today's photographer. Give everybody a wave. Next, I'd like to turn the microphone over to Jim Brooks to share some good work being done in our fair city. Jim, I'm making eye contact, trying to find you. There you are. From the floor, you're gonna honor some additional guests and honor their good work. Take it away.
Thanks, President Steve. One of the many functions of our Rotary Foundation of Cincinnati is our allocation grant program, and it supports smaller nonprofits in our community who are aligned in some way with Rotary's mission. During our most recent grant cycle, there were 3 such awardees of our allocation grants, and we're pleased to have their representatives with us today. So I'm going to take a moment and introduce each of them to you. So our first grant recipient is A Kid Again. This organization assembles group gatherings for kids with life-threatening conditions and their families to enjoy our area's tourist attractions like Reds Games and Kings Island. They've been doing this for 27 years and serve over 900 kids each year. With us today from A Kid Again is Steve Stevenson and Terry Shearer, who I just discovered is a Rotarian and past president of the Middletown Club.
I'd just quickly like to say on behalf of all our families, the children that we serve, and the entire staff, and all of the communities, just want to thank you for the grant. I will guarantee you your money is going to good use. And if you don't know anything about A Kid Again, akidagain.org. And I have a business card on each table. Please take time to learn about the work that we're doing even more. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Terry. Our next recipient is Cincinnati Tennis Foundation. They started off in 2015 offering tennis programming to underserved youth in Cincinnati area. Over the past couple years, this group has worked to resurface the tennis courts at Withrow High School and enable accessibility to the courts for wheelchair, adaptive, and visually impaired tennis players. With us today from Cincinnati Tennis Foundation is Laura Overbeck and Nikki Siafi.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you so much to everyone here and for the grant that we were able to receive. This is going to help us to get more wheelchair and adaptive tennis players out on the court, and we just appreciate all of the support from everyone. Thank you so much from everyone at the Cincinnati Tennis Foundation.
Thanks, Nikki. Our third recipient is certainly no stranger to Rotary. La Soup helps over 135 civic and social service agencies locally. Last year, out of their kitchen in Walnut Hills, they rescued over 1 million pounds of perishable food from restaurants and other sources and converted it into over 800,000 healthy meal servings. Their founder, Susie DeYoung, was the recipient of a Jefferson Award for Outstanding Public Service presented here at our club in 2017 and went on to national recognition in Washington, D.C. With us today from La Soup is Dan Tenosi.
Thank you, everyone, for this meaningful support. Please do come and visit our Walnut Hills facility. I'd be happy to show you around, give you a tour. And fun fact, I know where they hide the chocolate chip cookies. So ask for me when you come in. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Here, let's get a picture real quick. Yeah, just a reminder that our Rotary Foundation is always seeking new allocation grant applicants. The next 2 grant cycle deadlines are October 1st and April 1st, and information for any and all applicants can be found on our website. So congratulations again to our most recent allocation grant recipients. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim Brooks, and the work you're doing with the foundation. Congratulations, recipients. Thank you for your incredible work making our community better. Next, I'd like to welcome Steve Dreyfel back to the podium to introduce the Kharkiv Red Cross delegation.
Thanks, President Steve. You may be aware that Cincinnati has a sister city in Ukraine, Kharkiv. That partnership was initiated during the Cold War and has provided dozens of opportunities over the last 30 years for people of all ages to collaborate on projects and form relationships that last a lifetime. It is this sister city relationship that has brought us our guest here today. Bob Herring is president of the Sister City Partnership. We will hear from him in just a minute. Today we have the honor of hearing from Konstantin Bashrikov and Tatiana Zima through their interpreter, Sasha Etlin. Konstantin is president of the Kharkiv Red Cross and a member of the Ukrainian Red Cross Board. He has been with the Red Cross for 18 years, serving the people of Kharkiv. Tatiana has worked and volunteered in the nonprofit arena for many years before coming to the Red Cross. After volunteering for 2 years at the Red Cross, she was hired in January of this year, just 2 months before the war began, as executive director. It is a privilege to welcome to our club, our sister city, Kharkiv Red Cross President Konstantin Bashrikov and Executive Director Tatiana Zima.
Thank you. My name again is Bob Herring. I'm the president of the Cincinnati Kharkiv Sister City Partnership, and I'd like to take just a moment to set the context for the work that these people are doing. If Cincinnati were Kharkiv, the Russian border would be where the Monroe outlets are. On February 24th at 4 a.m., the bombs started falling and the Russian troops started moving. They pierced into the city of Kharkiv, and if you can imagine, the Red Cross headquarters on Dana Avenue here with a Russian armored personnel carrier coming down Dana Avenue. That was their experience. The Ukrainian army pushed them back to the Ring Road, the equivalent of Interstate 275. So at that time, if you lived in Hamilton, Fairfield, Mason, Lebanon, Westchester, Loveland, you would have been occupied by the Russian army. These are the situations, the circumstances under which these folks worked. The Ukrainian army has since pushed the Russians back close to the border, but the shelling of the city continues every day. For the first 153 days of the war, they were shelled 148 days, 5 days without going into the basements, the subway, to escape the Russian shelling. These folks are the boots on the ground. These folks are delivering the food and the medicine, delivering the clothing, delivering whatever the people of Kharkiv need. And it has been a real pleasure and honor for us at the Cincinnati Kharkiv Sister City Partnership to support them in their efforts. We stand with Kharkiv. We stand with Kharkiv before the war, during the war, and during the rebuilding. Please welcome Tatiana and Kostya.
Dear ladies and gentlemen,
для нас чрезвычайно важно и приятно находиться сегодня в этом зале.
it is extremely important and it's a great honor for us to be here with you in this hall today.
Поверьте, что прилетев несколько дней тому назад в Цинциннати, мы оказались дома.
You can believe me that although we flew into Cincinnati just a few days ago, we felt here right at home.
Мы оказались дома в комитете побратимов. Мы оказались дома в Красном Кресте.
We literally felt right at home in the homes of our sister city friends, and also felt right at home at the Cincinnati Red Cross.
Мы сегодня снова дома в таком сообществе ротарианцев. Это очень для нас важно.
And in this company of Rotarians, we also feel quite at home. And again, that's very important for us.
Само по себе чудо, что мы оказались в Цинциннати сегодня в такое сложное время.
It's a sheer miracle that we ended up in Cincinnati today during those unprecedented times.
Много чудес мы переживаем в нашей жизни все. Это жизнь.
Well, we all experience all kinds of miracles in our lives because that's what life is.
Мы думали, что самое большое чудо для всего мира – это ковид, но оказалось нет.
We thought that the biggest disaster for the entire humankind is COVID, but apparently it turned out to be not the case.
Сегодня идет война, и это чудо, что мы в этом зале.
So a war is going on today, and it's a real miracle that we're here in this hall.
Это чудо, в кавычках, о том, что вот этот осколок прилетел к офису Красного Креста в начале марта.
I'm showing you a fragment from a shell that ended up pretty close to the office of Kharkiv Red Cross at the beginning of the war, and it's a sheer miracle that we survived, and that's what I'm showing to you.
Это ужасно.
Of course it was horrible.
Чудеса, которые происходят. Это чудо, что 1 200 000 с лишним человек в Харькове получили помощь от Красного Креста.
Well, it's another miracle that 1.2 million people were helped by Kharkiv Red Cross.
Огромное количество людей страдают сегодня,
And a lot of people are suffering today.
и огромное количество людей получают помощь.
And a lot of people are also getting help.
В этом отношении чудо возможно только тогда, когда есть такие партнеры.
But we know that all those miracles can happen only when we have partners like you.
Когда есть Rotary-клубы,
When there are Rotary clubs around.
когда есть Красный Крест,
When, Red Cross exists.
когда есть побратимы,
When we have sister city people.
и когда есть крепкая дружба между Цинциннати и Харьковом.
When a strong friendship exists between Cincinnati and Kharkiv.
Я желаю вам всем, чтобы ваши мечты сбывались.
I hope that all your dreams will come true.
Чтобы в том пространстве, в котором вы находитесь каждый день, был мир.
That peace would prevail in the space you're in every day.
С наилучшими пожеланиями.
So my best wishes.
Дорогие друзья,
Dear friends,
оказавшись здесь, не могу сказать несколько слов о том, насколько близко и плотно мы сотрудничаем с Rotary-клубами в Харькове.
well, of course, I cannot not mention today about our tight and close cooperation with Rotary clubs in Kharkiv.
Мы в самые тяжелые дни войны, когда бомбы сыпались и когда не было света и ничего, мы понимали друг друга и помогали друг другу.
Even during the hardest days of the war, when the bombs were exploding all over the place, we really worked together and we understood each other.
И особенно мы близки как Красный Крест Харькова с Rotary Multinational.
And our Kharkiv Red Cross, again, is very close with Rotary Multinational.
И огромное спасибо вам за то, что вы делаете.
Again, thank you a lot. Thank you a lot for doing what you're doing.
Огромное спасибо всем тем, кто участвовал в марафоне, организованном комитетом для помощи харьковчанам.
Again, I would like to thank everybody who contributed during the fundraising marathon that was put together by the Sister City organization to help Kharkivites.
И мы верим и знаем, что вместе с вашей поддержкой наши железобетонные харьковчане выдержат, выстоят и выстроят новый город.
And we absolutely believe, we have complete faith in the fact that thanks to your support, our Kharkivites and our city is made from reinforced concrete. We will all prevail and we will all rebuild our city.
Tatiana, Konstantin, Duakuyu, thank you very much. Hold on for just one more minute. Thank you for your visit. Thank you for your bravery in the face of danger. When news of your visit reached us, we shared it with our Rotary friends. And when our friends in Kharkiv heard about your visit, they sent stories back of their partnership with you. They told us about the 400,000 kilograms of frozen foods the vital medicines, and the many, many truckloads of support for the most vulnerable in Kharkiv, especially in those first 30 or 40 days. Your friends in Cincinnati want you to know that we stand with you, and you are not alone. And we would like to make a contribution towards your humanitarian efforts on behalf of the Rotary Club of Cincinnati. Thank you. Дякую. Now I'd like to welcome Al Conscious to the podium to introduce our program.
Thank you, President Steve. Great program today. By the way, do you know who the first people were not to read the Apple terms and conditions? It was Adam and Eve. What? So today we're very pleased to welcome an old friend to many of us, Senator Portman. I've known him and his family for a long time, and we're very pleased that he could find the time to join us here. Rob was elected to represent Ohio in the U.S. Senate in 2010, and that brings back a lot of memories because my son and I made the trip to Washington, D.C. That was the same year that John Boehner was getting sworn in as Speaker of the House, so we went to both the swearing in for Rob and for John. He won re-election in 2016, winning 84 out of Ohio's 88 counties, and received the second highest vote total of any candidate in Ohio history. In the Senate, he serves on Finance, Foreign Relations, Homeland Security committees as the top Republican. Rob was born and raised in Cincinnati, where he still lives with his wife, Jane. Rob grew up in a small business family and continues to be a small business owner today. You may know Rob and his family own the Golden Lamb in Lebanon, Ohio. It is the oldest continuously operating business in Ohio. Prior to serving in the Senate, Rob served as U.S. Trade Representative and Director of Office Management and Budget in the George W. Bush administration. Before that, he represented Cincinnati area in the House of Representatives, the U.S. House of Representatives. Please welcome Senator Rob Portman.
Al, thank you very much. Thanks for your leadership of this group as a past president and also your leadership in the community. It's great to be with everyone here. It was fun to have our Northeast Ohio representative, Josh, come up and do the exchange of flags. It was kind of like a truce between the Youngstown and Cincinnati Rotary. So that's good. And Josh, we're proud of you. Earlier this year, Josh took personal time and his own resources and went over to Poland. And he took with him hospital supplies from MedWish. I don't know if our friends in the Red Cross know MedWish, but it's a great organization in Cleveland, Ohio that provides help primarily after natural disasters, but they have been doing a lot with regard to the war in Ukraine. And Josh went over there and spent time on the border and exchanged flags with the Rotary Club in Krakow. So Josh, we're proud of you, and thank you for your leadership in our team. I have to acknowledge someone else in the room, and that's Sarah Pattison, who now leads the efforts here at the Rotary. Prior to that, she was an intern for us in two roles, both on campaigns and in the official office. I told her today she's finally making an honest living, getting out of government. But you guys are lucky to have her. So Sarah, stand up. As some of you know, I'm very proud of my Rotary roots. My grandfather and innkeeper at the Golden Lamb and my namesake, Robert Jones, was a Paul Harris Fellow. My dad was in this club. He was also in the Blue Ash Club. And most importantly, you have another Portman now. As of a couple weeks ago, our daughter-in-law and a superstar with 3CDC in Cincinnati here, Sarah Hebel Portman, is with us. Stand up, Sarah. She's still got her new member sticker on her button. She hasn't graduated yet, so I hope she gets through the probationary period. I love Rotary, as you all know, and I'm honored to have spoken here many times during my service in the House and now in the Senate, and I appreciate it when Al reached out. The service above self motto is what it's all about. I love what Rotary does in our community. All over the state of Ohio, I speak at Rotary clubs and learn about what's going on. Here, we just saw some of the work that's being done in terms of the grants, but over the years, the number of disabled kids in Cincinnati who have been helped by Rotary is something you should be very, very proud of. Rotary internationally also is an awesome organization. Some of you know that Rotary has virtually eliminated one of the most dreaded diseases, which is polio. And it has done it, systematically through the years using the best science. And some of us don't think much about polio. I think about it a lot because my dad contracted polio when he was a kid. And the effects of polio were with him till the end of his life. He missed a year of high school at Walnut Hills High School because of polio. But think about that. Today, we don't even think about the disease or its debilitating impact on Americans, and a lot of that's because of the great work that Rotary does. So give yourselves a round of applause for that good work. And yet I have a bone to pick with this club. When I was a young aspiring lawyer in Cincinnati, about Sarah's age, I applied not once, but a few times to this Rotary Club, and I was turned down. And at the time, I think you had a policy that only one law firm had a monopoly here at the Rotary. I understand that's since been changed. The Politburo has changed that rule. Yeah, we appreciate that. But I took great solace in the famous words of Groucho Marx, who once said, "I would never want to be a member of a club that would want me as a member." And if you had let me in, I think I would have been a little suspicious of Rotary at that time in my life. But anyway, let's do a quick update on what's going on in D.C., and then I want to touch on Ukraine because we're so fortunate to have our special guest here today, and Cincinnati has played such an interesting role in Ukraine over the years. By the way, I was, John, I don't remember if you were there in 1987, 88, 89, but I was a member of the Sister City Committee. I couldn't get into Rotary, so I had a lot of time on my hands. And so I was a volunteer on the committee, and it was then, it was probably 88, when I first became acquainted with Ukraine. And it was thanks to Sister City. And I remember us saying, Kharkiv, this is a great town for us to connect with. We called it Kharkiv at the time, with the Russian pronunciation, because it's like Cincinnati. I remember I saw photographs of this beautiful river running through Kharkiv. And in many respects, it was similar to us in terms of size and industry and the beauty of the city. And that was my first exposure to Ukraine. Frankly, I couldn't have found it on a map but for Sister Cities. And in the meantime, thousands of Cincinnatians have learned more about Kharkiv. I think 1,200 Cincinnatians and Kharkiv residents have gone back and forth with exchanges. Think about that. Now, that was during the Cold War. It was pretty amazing that we chose Kharkiv and they chose us. And since then, 91, there was a revolution, and then another revolution of dignity in 2014, and here we are today. This beautiful city that we talked about is in the process of being bombed and bombed and bombed. The Russians' intent is to virtually destroy it, flatten it. And so it's appropriate that Rotary provided the financial resources today to the Red Cross, and I want to join all America in thanking the Red Cross in Ukraine for what you're doing. Yeah, I heard 1.2 million people have been served. I've been to Ukraine 8 times since 2014. I'm getting way too emotional here. But I first went in 2014 as an election observer. That was when they decided they wanted to be us. And they wanted to turn to Europe and to the United States and throw off their Russian-backed corrupt government and to become free. Free markets, freedom of expression, freedom of the press. And for Ukraine, this was a big deal. 100 Ukrainians died, picked off by snipers trying to stop the demonstrations. And I was there in the Maidan. Right after that, it was still smoldering. It was still being occupied by people in, camo outfits, not sure the new government was going to be pro-Russian or not. It was a very tense time. And the election went well. And the winner of that election committed himself to reform and democracy. And that was just 2014, but in the 8 years since then, Ukraine was making tremendous progress and becoming like us, having made the decision to embrace the West. That's what Vladimir Putin hates so much about Ukraine. It's not just that he wants to recreate the Russian Empire and the Soviet Union. He wants to obliterate a people because they dare to be free. And I've had the benefit of representing about 90,000 Ukrainian Americans, which helps for me to be engaged. But honestly, if I didn't represent a single Ukrainian, I would want to be here talking about this issue, because it is the fight for freedom in our generation. And the alternative is unacceptable, which is if Vladimir Putin wins the day, that he is able to take over a peaceful neighbor, a democracy, an ally of ours, that wants nothing other than to live in peace with its neighbors, including Russia. Think of what the world is like at that point. He won't stop in Ukraine, I don't believe, nor do others who listen to his words. But even if he did, this creates a more dangerous and volatile world. And the despots around the world, including the Chinese Communist Party, North Korea, Iran, and others, they take the lesson, which is that the West was not willing to stand up to an illegal, unprovoked, murderous assault on a democracy, just trying to live in peace, respecting the right of self-determination. So I've gotten to know, again, a lot of these Ukrainian Americans, some of whom have lost family members. I've been at the border. I have met the refugees streaming across. I've served food at World Central Kitchen, which is associated with La Soupe. I have had the chance to talk to women whose husbands were killed. I've talked to grandmothers with their grandchildren because the daughters and son-in-law were killed. I have seen in people's eyes this terror from their constant bombardment, again, from a country, from Russia, that has no interest in dealing with the UN or the United States or anyone else. They won't come to the table and bargain. And again, it's something that we should all care about. The trips that I've taken over there and the visits I've had with people here in this country have led me to take a hard line on this. I've given 20 speeches on the floor of the Senate on this topic, updating my colleagues every week that we've been in session since the invasion on what has happened. Most recently, I've talked about the Russian airstrike that killed 24 innocent civilians in central Ukraine, including this 4-year-old girl named Liza. Talk about kids with disability, a little girl with Down syndrome who was walking with her mom to speech therapy class. Her mother is still in intensive care. We've seen the videotaped torture and murder of Ukrainian soldiers just a couple weeks ago. Recently, a horrendous attack on a prison facility in Olenovika, which massacred 50 defenseless Ukrainian prisoners of war. These are crimes. I mean that in the literal sense. These are war crimes. Obviously counter to the Geneva Convention, counter to every civilized notion of how we should operate in the 21st century. Thousands of citizens have needlessly died. There are now 12 million Ukrainians who have been displaced. And again, mostly women and children, because the men have stayed behind to fight. So thank you for allowing your tax dollars to be used for this purpose. We just passed a $40 billion bill. I'm the co-founder and co-chair of what's called the Ukraine Caucus. And so I helped take a lead in getting that passed. And I heard from some Ohioans who thought it was too much. And I get that. It's a lot of money. But I would just suggest that the alternative is worse. And we have no troops on the ground. We have no boots on the ground. This is not like Iraq. It's not like Afghanistan. It's not like Vietnam. This is us simply providing them with the means to protect themselves. And I would also say that it's working for two reasons. One, because of the courage, the tenacity, the resourcefulness of the Ukrainian soldiers. It is extraordinary. When I first started going to Ukraine, their military was not impressive. I actually went to the line of contact, which is what it's called, in the Donbass, because remember the Russians invaded in 2014 and took part of Ukraine. And I went there where there were Russian snipers picking off Ukrainian soldiers. We had to wear helmets and flak vests and duck. And the army was, frankly, not well organized at that point. They were using a Soviet-style approach. There were a lot of militias that were not connected. Today, it's a modern, Western-style force that is very effective, as you've seen. And that's because, again, of your help. America and other NATO allies decided that we were going to provide them the training they needed. And over the past 6 or 7 years, that has happened, and that's made all the difference. Second is they have the weapons that they need to be able to survive. They don't have everything they need. And Congressman Steve Chabot and I and others have been fighting to give them better weapons more quickly that have the range and the accuracy they need to push back the Russian assault in eastern Ukraine and perhaps to be able to take back some of southern Ukraine, including the important city of Kherson. But they have better weapons. That's been helpful. But the third factor is more important than any of the others. And that is that they are fighting with heart and with spirit and passion because they are fighting for their home. You know, the Russians are there, mostly conscripts, not knowing quite what they're doing. They believe the propaganda, I suppose, that somehow they're denazifying or something else. But they don't see any Nazis. What they see is women and children getting killed by bombs. So their morale is not high. Whereas the Ukrainians are fighting for their families, fighting for their homeland, fighting for freedom. And they are fierce and tenacious, outgunned, outmanned. But that, to me, that third factor is the most important one, and one reason we should be supporting them, because they're the ones, you know, who are facing the fire. And in a sense, they're fighting for all of us. The countries in that part of the world all get it. I was recently in Romania and Moldova, and boy, do they get it, because they know they're next if it's not stopped in Ukraine. So I hadn't meant to talk so long about this, except, again, having our visitors here makes this a very special event. And I thank our sister city for giving Cincinnati a special role. And now we're taking that responsibility seriously, as Rotary has today, to be able to ensure that the Ukrainians have the opportunity to be able to defend themselves. That's all we're asking. I was supposed to give a Washington update, and in addition to talking about Bob Herring and the sister city and all the good work that they're doing, I will touch on a couple things, if I might, then open it up to questions on anything. I guess another aside first, for those who haven't followed it, I-71 is shut down southbound and northbound while they're dealing with an armed individual who tried to get access to the FBI office here in Cincinnati. Some of you know where it is, Kenwood Town Center on Montgomery Road, on the right on I-71 as you go up. He was armed with apparently an assault weapon, and according to social media accounts that they have, he was there to do harm to FBI agents. And he was repelled, but then went north to the Wilmington exit, and my understanding is he's still there, and he may have been shot, but that is an ongoing issue. So this is where we are as a country, and it saddens me to see it. We don't know his motive yet, but the conjecture, of course, is that this is related to what's going on in Mar-a-Lago and the larger issue of our country being so divided. In the invocation today, we heard that in the United States we settle our differences, and we have plenty of them, and we always have, by the way, with debate, as you said, and discussion. And we need to quickly reaffirm that that is who we are as Americans. We're not going to agree on everything, and that's okay, but we can disagree without violence, whether it's violent demonstrations or whether it's this kind of naked violence. There was an individual who was arrested and accused of trying to kill a Supreme Court justice recently, who was on the other side of the political spectrum, let's say. So this is something that all of us as Rotarians, as American citizens, need to play another important role, as we're doing with Ukraine, and step up and be heard, and encourage those who disagree with you to talk it out, to vote, to follow our democracy. I wasn't planning to talk about what happened in Mar-a-Lago, but I will say this about it. I think that the FBI needs to be transparent. I have not jumped to conclusions, nor will I, with my public comments, because we don't know what the basis was for that search or what they found. But I think our institutions are under threat right now, and it's a threat of confidence and trust. And the best way to do that is to provide transparency, understanding that in the criminal justice system, sometimes it's necessary to be able to keep confidentiality, but there's always a balance. And my view is that today that balance ought to be more on the side of transparency and explaining and letting people know, letting citizens know what's going on. We remember, unfortunately, what happened with the Steele dossier and with the FBI in connection with the elections. That's fresh in a lot of people's minds back in 2016. And so the FBI already has a burden to bear there, that they were politicized at one point. Some of them were. I think the vast majority of agents are totally apolitical and doing their job magnificently. But again, this is about where we are as a country and trust in institutions. And we need to get back to the point where we all believe, of course, that the criminal justice system does not have any political bias. It has to be blind. So another topic I hadn't planned to talk about today, but here we are. Here we are. Let me just say a couple good things that are going on for our state and our city and our country. And one is the CHIPS legislation that was just passed. This will be huge for Ohio. Again, it's a lot of money, but it's money to put us in a position to be able to bring a lot of economic opportunity to Ohio first. The Intel company has said, should this legislation pass, they're going to make a huge investment, the biggest economic development project ever in our state. It will affect all of us, including down here in Cincinnati. Lots of suppliers are going to come in. It's a $20 billion investment with the CHIPS Act. They say they're planning to expand beyond that. I hope they do. Second, it puts us in a position where we can finally be able, from an economic point of view, to have a more secure supply chain. This is really important because chips, and some of you are much more conversant in this than I am, but the semiconductors are in everything, and they're needed for everything. So if you tried to buy a car in the last year and it sat on a lot somewhere, it was because of lack of semiconductors. That happened to me. It happened to a lot of our constituents. Washing machines, electronics. We used to make most of the world's chips. In fact, we came up with the design and the research ourselves. We came up with semiconductors in this great country. Even 30 years ago, we had 40% of the chip production, just about, in America. Today we have 12%, and none of the high-end chips. And 90% of the high-end chips are made in one country, which is a democratic ally of ours, but very vulnerable, and that's Taiwan. Third, this is a national security issue. And so my involvement in this from the start was more on the national security side, long before Intel decided to jump into Ohio. That piqued my interest, however. Every other state would love to have that investment. But on the national security front, think about it. Unless you have a qualitative advantage in war these days, you can be blackmailed. You don't have a chance of winning a conflict against a superior ally. These chips are in everything we're sending to Ukraine. So the Javelin missiles are all heavily chipped. But think about the F-35, which we're not providing to Ukraine, but is the most sophisticated aircraft in the world. If you can't get chips because we don't have a supply chain, this could really cripple us. Again, 90% of the high end coming from Taiwan. So from a national security concern, the tanks, the weapons that are being used in Ukraine, the F-35, all of our sophisticated weaponry, we've got to have a more reliable source for these semiconductors. So that's good news in my view. It wasn't universally acclaimed. Some people on my side of the aisle said, well, the free market should reign here. Hey, I love free markets. I'm all for it. There is no free market in chips. China just made a $150 billion commitment to subsidizing chips. Ours is 52. Germany, while we were doing this legislation, the Senate, then it went to the House. Unfortunately, from my view, Speaker Pelosi loaded it up with a bunch of stuff that had nothing to do with competitiveness or chips or anything else. It took her 11 months to do that. In the meantime, the EU said, well, we're going to go ahead and do this. So Germany basically plagiarized our legislation and provided an incentive package just like ours, $50 billion, to the point that Intel told me, you know what, we were planning to come to Ohio, but we have euros on the table this fall, now, from the Europeans. We're going to go there first. And would they come back to Ohio? I don't know. Off the record? I don't know. On the record? Of course they would have. But that's the reality. So Singapore, South Korea, Taiwan, they all subsidize the heck out of chip production. Why? Because they want the production in their countries. And if we don't help, we're just not going to be in a position to be competitive or to have a military that is able to have that qualitative advantage. I wish that weren't true, but that's the reality. So anyway, Steve and I have spent a lot of time on this issue, and the national security concern, again, is paramount to me. But I think that's good news for our country, and certainly for our state. The other one I just want to mention briefly is the Brent Spence. For 25 years now, I've been complaining about it and trying to fix it. And finally, we're going to be able to do it thanks to the infrastructure legislation. And thank you. Yeah. I drive across it twice a week, and I say a prayer every time I go across. And, you know, usually Gabe's at the wheel, but sometimes me, and you're literally inches from a semi because there's no shoulder, because it's carrying twice as much traffic, cars and trucks, as it was ever intended to carry. So we squeezed every inch out of it to the point that it's obviously not just causing huge traffic jams and economic loss here in our region and around the country, because 3% of the nation's commerce goes over that one bridge every day. But also it's dangerous. And many of you know this because you've seen accidents on it and you experienced the trucks colliding, which closed it down for 6 weeks last year. But we got to fix it. And finally, in this legislation, we will have the funding to be able to do that. So it's going to take a little while because it's a big project. But instead of that one bridge, there'll be another bridge next to it, and you'll have 4 lanes instead of 2 lanes, basically, or 4, series of lanes. And won't that make it easier for everybody to be able to traverse Cincinnati? By the way, no tolls. Thank you very much. So I was going to talk about 5 or 6 other issues, but I'm not because of the interest in getting to some questions. Do we have time? We have time?
We do have time.
Good. Okay. I'm running through the tape. I've got literally 6 projects that I'm working on, one of which has to do with the opioid crisis, trying to get legislation passed to make sure that fentanyl gets scheduled as a Schedule I drug so that our law enforcement and so that the bad guys, the transnational criminal organizations, know that. Believe it or not, that expires. We're trying to get more funding into treatment and recovery. We're trying to get more funding into the border. We've introduced legislation bipartisan to help the border, to get more inspections of vehicles. This stuff is just flooding over the border. This morning I met with the Hamilton County Addiction Response Coalition. I've worked with them for years on legislation. Started an anti-drug coalition here in town 28 years ago. Still going strong, prevention first. But we've got to pass some additional legislation right now because, unfortunately, last year we had the largest number of overdose deaths in the history of our country. 107,662 people died of overdoses, 2/3 of them from fentanyl. So, unfortunately, we were making good progress. Now, overdose deaths are back up again. So we're doing legislation on that, on retirement security, on cyber, on protecting our research from China, on ensuring that as we're putting more money into research that China doesn't make off with it as they have in the past. And then retirement security, some of you are very interested in because you're getting to be my age. 401ks and IRAs, trying to bump them up more. So all those are things I want to get done in the 4 months, 2 weeks, 3 days, 4 hours, 36 seconds left. Who's counting? But I can't wait to see everybody more when I'm back home. But thank you for giving me the honor of representing you, truly, and letting me come to Rotary now and again and get input from you all and most importantly for your leadership in this community. Thank you. Okay, Sarah, you're in charge.
Senator, thank you for your service. Thank you for everything you've done for us. I'd like to apologize for not having an open classification for you years ago. I am, however, quite confident that we have a classification open now for a United States Senator. And if you hurry, you might beat someone else to the post.
Yeah. I thought you banned
and if you want to wait a
politicians.
few months, we can make it United States Senator / retired. So you have some options.
God bless you. Thank you.
Senator Portman, I also want to thank you for your service, especially for our area, so thank you very much. And there's so much that's going on in our country, and we get so much information. What is your recommendation so that we can really find out what's the truth and what isn't?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and unfortunately, most Americans are tending to migrate to news that reaffirms their views, and sometimes it's accurate, sometimes it's really not. So I think it's contributed the division we talked about earlier. So people are radicalized online, but even on broadcast media, it's tough sometimes. My only suggestion would be, one, to flip around. So when you're watching MSNBC and you get a certain perspective, go over to Fox and see what they're saying, and vice versa. Because there is no cable program, at least that I've found, that gives you the news straight. Now, there are some that are trying to do that now, and I can't think of the name of them. Maybe some of you know, and you can find them, but you know, they aren't supported by the kind of advertising that the more controversial stations are. And so when I complain about it, when they ask me to go on, and I say, well, I don't want to go on your program because it's so biased one side or the other, they say, well, that's what sells. That's what sells. So we got to figure out how to get people to not just do what sells, but sell the truth. And I think it'd have a larger audience if it was done properly and professionally. The other thing is online. There are a lot of good sources of information online that are trying to give it to you straight. You got to dig for it a little bit. So I don't know. When I talk to young people, I say, I don't know. Are you Republicans or Democrats? Almost all of them they don't know. They're independent. I said, well, just get it from both sides. Don't just take it from one side. Don't just listen to one point of view. Try to get a broad spectrum and then put it together yourself. But I think you put your finger on a problem in our country right now, particularly with social media, where you can go down a deep rabbit hole on the right or on the left that might be full of conspiracies that make no sense, but you come to believe it. And not to jump to conclusions here. Who knows why this person did what he did today? But I imagine that he believes some things that he has read or seen, and it leads to those kinds of tragic circumstances.
Thank you for being here today with us. Yes, and as a former superintendent of schools and a Board of Education member now, and also the legislative liaison, a question: where are we budgetary-wise and fiscally, as far as at the national level, for special need children and special education and disabled children, as far as raising some revenue for those very needy students that we have nationally and in the state of Ohio?
Yeah. Well, first, thanks for your work, and thanks for coming to D.C. It's been fun to see you there. I told you we're open for business again, so come on back. COVID was bad for a lot of reasons, but one was it kind of cut us off. And Steve, you had the same experience, I imagine. You couldn't meet with your constituents like you used to. We used to have a coffee every week, and we'd have 30, 40, sometimes 100 people there from Ohio. And suddenly we were told nobody's allowed in the building. Now you can come in, you have to kind of be escorted. It gets a little complicated, but so come back. We're not fully funding the commitment we made to special education, and that's obviously a big issue. The funding has increased over the past several years, and I think probably will continue to, but I don't think, honestly, in the next short period here with our deficits where they are and with the attention on so many other things that we're likely to see a big bump up. But I think when the education bill comes up again, probably there'll be another push to put some more money into special education. And there's some school districts here in Greater Cincinnati and around the state that do a terrific job on special ed, just amazing. But they fund most of it themselves, and usually it's with levy dollars. And I know that's tough, but boy, what a huge difference it can make. And you've got kids that are dyslexic who otherwise, would just fall behind, and you catch it in second, third, fourth grade. It's amazing what can happen. They end up being some of the top graduates once they learn how to deal with it. But you've got to identify it and deal with it. And so I do think it's really important. And thank you for your advocacy. Yeah, and the numbers are rising, the kids that need the help.
Thank you, Senator, for being with us today. My question, one, I want to say I'm happy to hear no tolls on the road over there that's going to be built. And two, regarding the opioid crisis, my work, I deal with a lot of organizations trying to find locations to put these treatment facilities. Have you seen this getting better? On one hand, I'm happy because it's, I'm doing the work and it's keeping my family fed, but on the other hand, it's like, all of these different treatment facilities popping up, it's kind of worrying me that this epidemic is not getting better. So do you have any insight on that? And thank you again.
Well, I'd like to put you out of work and put you in a more fun vocation where you're not having to deal with this crisis. But I'm afraid we're going to continue to have a big problem here for a while. I will say it's interesting. I don't know if you work mostly in Hamilton County, but if you look at the numbers since 2017 in the state and in Hamilton County, in 2017, 2018 in particular, we had a 22% reduction in overdose deaths in Ohio in 2018. We were really making progress, particularly here. And it was because we were committed to more treatment, recovery, more prevention. We were doing some of the right things, providing Narcan where necessary. And then the crisis hit, the pandemic hit, and boy, people couldn't go see their recovery coaches. People were feeling more anxiety, job loss, uncertainty, and the rates shot back up again. In the last few years, Hamilton County actually has been decreasing overdose deaths at least. Now that's not everything. That doesn't measure all addiction aspects, but at least the overdose deaths have gone down. But the state of Ohio has gone up, and the country's gone up. So I mentioned 107,000 is a record level of overdoses. Here, partly because of the work of this coalition I met with today, I believe, they're beginning to make some progress. So I would say, yeah, there's going to be more need for treatment, but here we're actually doing a little better job of it. We just recently had 20 beds established at Talbert House. And that's been really helpful because there was no place for first responders to take people for a while, because there weren't enough treatment facilities. And one of the more exciting things that's happening here locally that started in Colerain Township and now is spreading around the country is that when somebody overdoses, instead of just sending them home or having them go home or taking them to the emergency room, where frankly the hospitals are not equipped to care for them and they usually just sit around for a while, then they leave, is to actually get them into treatment. And there are these, what they call quick response teams in Hamilton County. They call it different things, rapid response teams. And what it is you go to the person's home who just overdosed, and usually they've just had their life saved by Narcan, usually administered by a first responder, often a firefighter, sometimes a police officer. And you go to the home and you've got a police officer with you, and you've got a social worker with you, and you've got a treatment provider with you. And it's amazing. I've gone on these visits, and it's pretty extraordinary. They let you in the door, for one thing, which surprised me. And they're willing to talk. And instead of arresting the person, you say, you know what? How about trying treatment? And hopefully one of the people there at least is a recovery coach, meaning somebody that went through recovery, him or herself, or is in recovery, and can say, hey, I can tell you, I know how you're feeling, I know how tough this dependency is, because it grips you. This opioid stuff particularly is just, as you know, it's intense. And it works. People say, yeah, I'll try it. So today they had some data showing that more than half the people who they did this with actually not just went, but stayed in treatment. And that's how you stop the cycle of overdose after overdose after overdose. And you know who's the most enthusiastic about this program? The first responders. Because they are tired of helping the same people again and again and again. I mean, that's a dead end. I mean, Narcan's wonderful, it's a lifesaver, it saved a lot of lives, but it's not the answer. The answer is to get people back to work, back with their families, back on a life where they can be productive and feel some sense of accomplishment in their lives. So thanks for pushing treatment, because I've seen it work so often. I'm sure everybody in this room has an experience and a family member or a friend in recovery, and it works.
Do we have time for one more question?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Господин сенатор, огромное вам спасибо за то, что вы высказали свою точку зрения.
Okay, dear Mr. Senator, thank you so much for sharing your points of view with us
на ситуацию в Украине.
Regarding the situation of Ukraine, in Ukraine.
Мы понимаем, что это не только ваше мнение, а и мнение тех людей, которых вы представляете.
We understand that it's not only your personal opinion, but also the opinion of the people you represent.
А это значит, что очень много людей в Америке, людей, которые понимают, что такое независимость и свобода.
And it means that a lot of people in America understand what independence and freedom are all about.
Поддерживают нас в этой борьбе.
And they support us in our struggle.
Это очень-очень важно, и спасибо вам огромное.
Again, it's very important. Thanks a lot to everybody.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Gabe, you come up here. Okay, we're going to do something here that's kind of fun. And, sir, the interpreter or someone in your group, can you come up here? With a phone. You need to have a phone you can video with. Okay. Now, one of you needs to stay there. The Ukrainians need to stay there because you need to lead the...
Someone should take the picture from the floor.
Okay. Yes, you need to stay. This is going to be orchestrated here. You need to stay because you need to respond to what I'm going to say. I just need a camera up here. I just need a video up here. You know, you'd think they'd follow the directions of a senator, but no, it's just... Okay, we're going to do something. First, let's practice with something we're used to. OH! Okay, that was weak, but we'll try it again. OH! That was awesome. Okay, so in Ukraine, I'm at the line of contact once, and I was given a flag by the Ukrainian military, and it said, getting all Ukrainian emotional again. It said, glory to Ukraine, and then glory to the heroes. And then it had the Ukrainian version of that. I thought that's interesting. And then the next time I'm in Ukraine, I'm told this is like the thing. This is the Ukraine national saying. And so it goes like this. First you say, glory to Ukraine, and then the response is, kind of like OHIO, glory to the heroes. So all you have to do, it's really easy, and this is going to be a cool video, we'll send it back with you to show the support in Cincinnati for you, is I'm going to yell out, Slava Ukraini, and then you're going to yell out, and they're going to really do it well, Slava Heroyam. Heroyam. I'm sorry, Heroyam Slava. Heroyam Slava. Whew, glad I asked you. So your job is to go Heroyam Slava. Let's practice it once. Heroyam Slava. Louder. Heroyam Slava. Okay, you ready? Here we go. This is it. Camera's on. Slava Ukraini. Thank you.
Senator Portman, thank you so much for your moving presentation. Thank you for your love of Rotary, for sharing your lovely daughter-in-law with us, and for rallying us to support our friends in our sister city of Kharkiv. It has been an emotional and just wonderful Rotary Club meeting. I would like to express our appreciation to you, Senator, by sharing with you and presenting you with a coin. This coin says Rotary Club of Cincinnati on one side. On the other side, it has the four-way test. And these are the four principles that Rotarians use to serve the public good. And in addition, in recognition of your presentation today, we're making a gift to that End Polio Now campaign in its 30-year mission to eradicate wild polio from the planet. And we are, just as you mentioned, this close. Your dad would be proud. We're just this close with just a handful of cases left. One more round of applause for the senator. Thank you. last order of business, and it's an important one. Split the pot.
Split the pot.
There's $150 at stake here, and a what? Oh, no, $37 at stake here. And I'm like, 3,700? No, that's a 37.0. $37 at stake, and $150 if someone wins and draws the Queen of Hearts. Senator, would you pull a winning ticket for us?
This is the worst thing for politicians.
Oh. Thank you, sir. We have the last four digits are 3793. Any winners? Must be present to win. We've got a winner.
It's nice sitting today. Yeah, Bob.
I will.
Glad you're doing well.
So you're drawing for the Queen of Hearts, Bill. $150 on the line. Oh, so close. The plot continues to roll. Couple things. Our Ukrainian Kharkiv Red Cross delegation will stay after if anyone would like to meet them and have make any connections. Next week, we are not at the Hilton. It's a Rotary road show. We're going to the national headquarters of Disabled American Veterans in Erlanger, Kentucky, so don't come to the Hilton. You'll stay tuned for details on for reservations and directions. Guests, friends, Rotarians, thank you for a great meeting. Thank you for a little bit of extra time. It was a packed agenda. Until then, make it a great week. Meeting adjourned.